My wife cheated on me with her boss, then suddenly claimed I stole $300, $0 from our joint account to hide her affair, and now she's threatening legal action to take everything I own. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy to get blindsided like this, but here I am, sitting in my living room staring at my phone trying to process what I just found out. The craziest part. My wife, Emily, was cheating on me with her boss, Mark. Yeah, Mark. The guy she's been working with for the past 2 years. I had no idea she was screwing around with him until I stumbled across the messages by accident. You see, I'd always trusted Emily. She was the perfect wife, hot, smart, ambitious, and I thought we had a solid life together. But all that changed in a matter of days. It started with little things. She'd come home later than usual, claimed she was working late, but I noticed her phone was more guarded than ever. She'd hide her screen when I walked into the room, and her texts suddenly became more secretive. At first, I just thought she was stressed about her job, maybe overworked, or maybe she was just being paranoid. But then one night I decided to check her phone while she was asleep. I know, big mistake, but I was desperate for answers. That's when I saw it. The messages. They weren't explicit at first, just flirtatious stuff. Then it escalated. Pictures of her in bed with Mark, texts about how much she loved him, how she was tired of pretending to be happy with me. I couldn't believe it. My wife, the woman I married, was cheating on me with her boss. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I couldn't sleep that night. My mind kept racing. How long had this been going on? Had I missed the signs? Was I not enough? I kept asking myself what I did wrong, but honestly, it didn't matter. The betrayal was right there in black and white. The next day, I decided I had to confront her. I waited until she came home from work, heart pounding, hands sweaty. I called her into the living room, told her I knew about her and Mark. Her face twisted into this bitchy sneer like I was just some inconvenience she needed to deal with. She looked me straight in the eyes and lied. You're crazy. I don't know what you're talking about. You're just paranoid. She dismissed it like it was nothing, but I saw through her act. Her eyes flickered and I could tell she was trying to hide something. I demanded the truth. She started yelling, claiming I was just jealous, that Mark was nothing, that she loved me and only me. But her words didn't match her actions. I could see it in her eyes. She was lying. And then she threw in the most ridiculous excuse. She said she was just venting to Mark about her stressful job and that it meant nothing. Yeah, right. She insisted she never cheated, but I had the screenshots and the evidence. It was clear as day. That moment hit me hard. I was furious, crushed, and confused all at once. I felt betrayed on every level, emotionally, physically, financially. I'd worked so hard to build our life, and now I was faced with the realization that my wife had been lying to me from the start. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. How did I not see it? How did I not feel it? I felt like I was drowning. In that chaos, I started thinking about everything. Our savings, our joint account, the house. We had over $300, $0 saved up, and I kept wondering what she might do with it if I confronted her, or worse, if she decided to take everything. I knew she was the kind of person who could turn things around on me in an instant, especially if she felt cornered. I didn't trust her anymore, and I knew I had to come up with a plan. I needed to protect what was mine. That's when I started to realize that this wasn't just about her cheating. It was about control, manipulation, and a desire for revenge. She thought she could get away with it, that I'd never find out. But I was done being the naive husband. I needed to get ahead of her, to catch her in her lies and make her regret ever messing with my life. The betrayal cut deep, but it also lit a fire inside me. I wasn't going to let her ruin me without a fight. So I started digging into her phone, her bank accounts, and even her emails. I wanted to know exactly how deep this went. I had a sinking feeling she was planning something, maybe trying to cover her tracks or even make it look like I was the one stealing money. I found some suspicious transactions, large withdrawals she claimed she didn't authorize, and some secret accounts she'd opened under false names. It was like a game, but I was determined to win. I also noticed she was already making moves to spin the story. She started accusing me of being controlling, jealous, paranoid, anything to shift the blame. She even claimed I was having an affair myself, which was the most absurd thing I'd heard. I wasn't cheating, and I had no reason to. All I wanted was the truth, and I was getting closer to it, piece by piece. I knew I had to act fast before she could do any more damage. That's where I stand now. Heartbroken, betrayed, but also angry as hell. I don't know where this is going, but I do know one thing. She's not getting away with this without consequences. I've got proof, and I'm ready to fight for what's mine. If she thinks she can lie her way out of this and walk away with everything, she's got another thing coming. I just hope I can come out of this with some dignity intact and maybe, someday, trust again. After I gathered enough evidence, I knew I couldn't just sit back and let her keep playing her games. Emily was already spinning her web of lies, trying to make me look like the bad guy, claiming I was paranoid or that I was the one cheating. But I had the proof, screenshots, bank statements, her secret emails, and I was determined to use it. Still, I had to be cautious. Emily was manipulative, and I knew she'd try to turn the situation around if she felt cornered. That night, I sat down and drafted what I thought was a solid plan. I couldn't confront her without an airtight case. I started by digging into the financial mess she'd created. I discovered that over the past few months, she'd been funneling money into a secret account, an account she opened under a false name, probably to hide the cash she was planning to run with. I also found evidence of large withdrawals right around the time I started suspecting her. It was clear she was getting ready to disappear, or at least cover her tracks better. I then contacted a lawyer. I needed legal advice on how to handle this mess, especially since she was already throwing accusations about me stealing money. The lawyer confirmed my fears. She might try to claim I was the one stealing, or even worse, she might try to take everything in a divorce. That's when I realized I had to act fast before she could spin this into a full-blown disaster. In the days that followed, I started documenting everything. I saved every message, email, bank statement, and any other evidence I had. I even hired a private investigator to keep tabs on her movements and to confirm if she was planning to leave town or make any sudden moves. It was a stressful process. Every time my phone buzzed or I saw a new bank alert, my stomach tightened. I felt like I was living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Meanwhile, Emily was busy putting on her act. She'd come home late, act like nothing was wrong, and throw her bitchy attitude my way whenever I pressed her about her whereabouts. She'd say things like, "You're just jealous because I'm successful and you're not," or "You're overreacting, this is all in your head." She kept insisting she loved me, but her actions told a different story. Every conversation with her felt like walking on thin ice. I could tell she was trying to manipulate the situation, make me doubt myself, make me feel like I was losing my mind. One day, I caught her in a lie about her whereabouts. She told me she was at a conference out of town, but I found a text message on her phone from Mark, an explicit message sent from her phone at the exact time she said she was busy with her conference. That was the moment I knew I had her cornered. I printed out the message, showed it to her, and her face went pale. She tried to deny it, but I had evidence. I told her I wasn't going to be played anymore. That's when she snapped. She started screaming, calling me all sorts of names, saying I was ruining her career, her reputation, and that I was just a jealous husband with trust issues. She claimed I was the one cheating, that I was the one stealing money from our joint account, just trying to deflect everything onto me. Her tone was bitchy, aggressive, and manipulative. It was clear she thought she could get away with everything, but I wasn't going to let her. I felt a strange mixture of anger, sadness, and disgust. I loved her once, or at least I thought I did, but now I saw her for what she really was, a liar, a cheat, and a user. The betrayal cut deep. I kept thinking about all the moments I'd trusted her, all the plans we made, and how she'd just thrown it all away for some quick sex with her boss. I felt sick. That evening, I decided I needed to get an official separation. I couldn't keep living like this, looking over my shoulder, wondering if she was going to do something to ruin me financially or emotionally. I talked to my lawyer again, and we drafted a plan to serve her with divorce papers. I also told her I was going to report her for the financial fraud. She'd been embezzling, lying, and hiding assets, and I had enough evidence to prove it. The confrontation was ugly. She yelled, called me names, threatened me with legal action, and accused me of everything under the sun. She said I was just a jealous fool, that she'd ruin me if I tried to take her to court. But I didn't care anymore. I felt a strange sense of relief. Finally, I was taking control of my life. I realized I'd been a prisoner to her lies for too long. In that moment, I knew this was the beginning of the end. I was tired of her bitchy attitude, her lies, and her manipulations. I was done being the victim. I was going to fight, not just for my money, but for my dignity. I had to rebuild from this, and honestly, I didn't know what that looked like yet. But I knew I deserved better than her. I deserved honesty, respect, and someone who wouldn't cheat and steal from me. Now, I'm just waiting for the legal process to kick off. It's a mess, but I'm prepared. I've got everything documented, and I've made it clear I won't be taken for a ride. She can threaten all she wants. She's not getting away with this. I just hope that in the end, I come out of this with some shred of my self-respect intact. After I decided to serve her with divorce papers and move forward with the legal process, Emily's behavior only got worse. She was bitchy, confrontational, and desperate to turn the tables. I knew she was trying to manipulate the situation. She always did. The more I dug into her finances, the more I uncovered her schemes. She'd been lying about her income, hiding assets, and funneling money into accounts I didn't even know existed. I was furious, but also relieved I had concrete proof now. One day, she stormed into my office, furious and crying, claiming I was ruining her career and reputation. She yelled about how I was just jealous, how she'd never cheat on me, and how I was paranoid. She looked at me with that bitchy glare like I was the one at fault. Her voice was shrill, and she was trying to guilt trip me into backing down. I didn't fall for it. I told her she'd crossed the line and I was done playing her game. That's when she threw the biggest lie of all. She claimed I had stolen $300, $0 from our joint account, that I was the one embezzling money to cover up my own affair. I was stunned. I didn't even know she was capable of such a lie. I had to keep my composure, but inside I was boiling. I told her that if she had any proof, she should bring it to the police, but I knew she didn't. It was just another manipulation tactic. In the meantime, I worked with my lawyer to freeze our joint account. I knew she might try to drain it before the divorce, and I didn't want her to get away with anything. I also hired a private investigator to keep tabs on her movements, just in case she tried to leave town or hide even more assets. The pie confirmed my suspicions. She'd been making secret withdrawals, setting up additional accounts, and planning her escape route. She was serious about disappearing with the money. The more I uncovered, the angrier I got. I started thinking about all the years I'd wasted building a life with her, only for her to throw it all away for some affair and greed. I remembered how she'd always been bitchy when she didn't get her way, how she'd manipulate people to get what she wanted. She was a master at lying, and I realized I'd been blind for too long. I felt like I was fighting a losing battle, but I also knew I had to keep my head clear. One night I sat down and went through everything I had collected: screenshots, bank statements, emails. I made a timeline of her lies and actions, trying to connect all the dots. It was overwhelming, but it gave me clarity. I saw how she'd planned her escape, how she'd been lying to me for months. I also found a few emails she'd sent to Mark, discussing how she was tired of the marriage and ready to start fresh with him. That sealed it for me. She was serious about leaving, and she was willing to burn everything down to do it. The days that followed were tense. Emily was becoming more aggressive, throwing tantrums and accusing me of being the real problem. She called me controlling, jealous, and even threatened to ruin me legally. She claimed I was the one stealing money, that I'd been unfaithful, and that she'd expose everything if I tried to take her to court. I knew she was trying to intimidate me, but I wasn't backing down. I had enough evidence to fight her in court, and I was ready. I also started reaching out to friends and family, warning them about her behavior. I wanted to make sure she couldn't spin any false stories to turn people against me. I told my close friends what I knew, and I kept my lawyer updated on all her moves. I was doing everything I could to protect myself, my reputation, and my money. I knew she'd try to make me the villain, but I wasn't going to let that happen. Meanwhile, Emily's bitchy attitude was escalating. She'd yell at me for things I didn't do, call me names, and try to guilt-trip me into staying silent. She accused me of ruining her life, when in reality she was the one who'd ruined ours. I stayed calm, kept my distance, and let her blow off steam. I knew that the more she acted out, the more evidence I'd have against her. I also made sure to record some of her outbursts, just in case I needed them later. Things came to a head one afternoon when she stormed into the living room, yelling about how I was trying to destroy her, and how she'd take everything I owned. She was threatening legal action, claiming I stolen the money, and that she'd make sure I paid for what I'd done. I looked her dead in the eyes and told her I had all the proof I needed. I said I was done playing her game and that she'd regret crossing me. Honestly, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. I knew the fight was just beginning and I wasn't sure how it would turn out. But I also knew I had to stay strong. I couldn't let her manipulate her way out of this. I was ready to face whatever came next, whether it was court, her accusations, or her bitchy attitude. I just wanted this nightmare to be over and to finally get some clarity. Now, I'm just waiting for the legal process to unfold. The truth is out there, and I'll do everything I can to protect myself. I've learned a lot from this mess, mostly that some people are capable of incredible betrayal, and you can't trust anyone blindly. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know I'll come out of this stronger. And honestly, I'd tell anyone in a similar situation to gather their evidence, stay calm, and fight for what's right. Because if you don't, some people will walk all over you and take everything you've worked for. The legal wheels started turning faster than I expected. I had everything documented, screenshots of her texts, bank statements, emails, and even recordings of her bitchy outbursts. My lawyer was lining up everything for the divorce, and I made it clear I wasn't going to back down. Emily, of course, was trying to spin it her way, playing the victim, claiming I was the one stealing money, that I was controlling and jealous. But I had proof to counter every lie she threw out there. One day, she showed up at my office, in full bitch mode. Her face was twisted with anger and she was trying to look innocent, but it was obvious she was just trying to intimidate me. She started yelling about how I was ruining her reputation, how I was trying to destroy her career, and how she'd expose everything if I didn't back off. Her voice was shrill, and she kept calling me names: controlling, paranoid, insecure. I stayed calm, knowing that her anger was just a desperate attempt to manipulate the situation. I told her straight up that I had enough evidence to prove her lies, and that I wasn't going to be bullied anymore. I reminded her that I had hired a private investigator, and that I had proof of her secret accounts and her plans to leave with the money. I made it clear I was serious about the divorce, and I wasn't going to let her threaten or intimidate me into silence. Her bitchy attitude only intensified, but I knew I had the upper hand. The next few weeks felt like a roller coaster. Emily kept trying to drag me into arguments, accusing me of everything under the sun. She'd burst into tears, then switch to screaming at the top of her lungs. She even tried to guilt-trip me about how hard her life was, how she was so stressed, and how I was just jealous of her success. I knew it was all a ploy. She was desperate to keep control and hide her tracks, but I stayed firm. I knew she was trying to wear me down, but I wasn't going to let her. Meanwhile, I worked with my lawyer to prepare the divorce papers. I wanted to make sure everything was airtight, especially the financial part. I demanded a full disclosure of all her accounts, assets, and any hidden money. I wasn't about to let her walk away with a dime more than she deserved. I also started talking to my bank, making sure they were aware of the situation and could flag any suspicious activity. I was determined to protect myself from her schemes. One afternoon, I got a call from my lawyer. She had filed the divorce papers, and we were now officially in the legal process. I felt a strange mixture of relief and anxiety. Relief because I was finally taking control, but anxiety because I knew Emily wouldn't go down without a fight. She was bitchy, manipulative, and she'd do anything to hold on to. What she wanted: money, status, and her affair. I knew she'd try to drag this out, spin stories, and maybe even try to accuse me of things I didn't do. To prepare, I started gathering even more evidence. I hired a forensic accountant to analyze her financial records and uncover any additional hidden assets or suspicious transactions. I also made copies of everything, just in case she tried to destroy or tamper with the evidence. I was playing it smart. If this was a game, I had to be 10 steps ahead. I also reached out to a few friends who knew about her behavior, making sure I had witnesses if she tried to make false accusations against me. Her bitchy attitude only grew worse as the legal process moved forward. She'd call me at all hours, screaming and crying, trying to guilt-trip me into dropping the case. She'd threaten to ruin my reputation, to tell everyone I was the one stealing money, that I was the bad guy. But I knew better. I had the proof, and I wasn't going to let her manipulate her way out of this. I kept my cool, stayed professional, and focused on the facts. One day, she showed up at my house unannounced, demanding I drop the divorce. Her face was twisted with anger, and she was spitting mad. She yelled about how I was ruining her life and how she'd fight to the death to keep what's hers. I told her she could threaten all she wanted, but I wasn't backing down. I told her I had everything documented, and if she kept pushing, I'd be ready to take everything to court. That shut her up for a while, but I knew she was just biding her time, planning her next move. Deep down, I felt exhausted. I've been fighting this battle for months now, and the emotional toll was heavy. I still loved her, or at least I thought I did, but I couldn't ignore the truth anymore. She'd betrayed me in the worst way possible, cheating, lying, stealing, and she was trying to manipulate her way out of it all. I'd been naive for too long, and now I was finally waking up. The worst part was knowing she was still bitchy, still manipulative, and still trying to control everything. But I was done being a victim. I kept reminding myself that I was doing this for me, for my sanity, my dignity, and my future. I knew I couldn't change her, but I could control how I responded. I was prepared for the fight ahead, court hearings, accusations, whatever it took. I just wanted to get through this, rebuild my life, and leave her behind. The betrayal had opened my eyes to who she really was, and I was never going to let her get away with it. The court dates started rolling in faster than I anticipated. Emily was relentless, trying every trick in the book to delay, manipulate, or spin her lies. She showed up at the hearings bitchy and confrontational, throwing accusations left and right. Her attitude was classic: blame everyone else, deny everything, and try to make herself look innocent. But I had the evidence, and I knew I had the upper hand. Every time she tried to accuse me of theft or infidelity, I calmly presented the proof I'd collected: bank statements, emails, her secret accounts, and recordings of her bitchy outbursts. Her lawyer, of course, was trying to argue that I was the one at fault, that I'd been controlling, jealous, and that I was the one stealing money. But my lawyer kept hitting back with facts: the hidden accounts, the large withdrawals, the false documents Emily had tried to forge. We had everything documented. I was confident that once the judge saw the evidence, she'd see through Emily's manipulations. Meanwhile, Emily's bitchy attitude only got worse. She'd sit in court, rolling her eyes, throwing her head back like she was above all of it. She'd glare at me, sneer at my lawyer, and try to intimidate everyone in the room. Her voice was sharp, full of contempt whenever she spoke. She accused me of all kinds of things, saying I was an unfaithful, controlling husband, while I just sat there calm, knowing I had everything to prove my innocence. One day she went so far as to threaten me outright. She told me she'd ruin me financially, that she'd take everything I owned, and that she'd make sure I never recovered. She sneered and said, "You think you're so smart? Just wait. I've got people, I've got dirt on you, and I'll make sure everyone knows what a piece of shit you are." That's when I realized how deeply bitchy and manipulative she really was. She thought her threats would scare me, but honestly, I felt more determined than ever. I kept my cool, though. I knew that reacting emotionally would only play into her hands. Instead, I focused on the legal strategy. I worked closely with my lawyer to ensure I was covering all my bases, disclosing everything, countering her claims, and preparing for the worst. I also hired a forensic accountant to analyze her financial activities in detail, making sure I had all the numbers to back up my case. I wasn't leaving anything to chance. The worst moment came during a particularly tense hearing when Emily's lawyer tried to claim I was the one stealing money, that I'd been unfaithful, and that I was trying to manipulate the court. I calmly handed over the evidence, screenshots, bank records, her secret accounts, and watched her face drain of color. The judge looked over everything carefully, and I could see her taking notes. I felt a rush of relief. This was the proof that would finally show the truth. Throughout it all, Emily's bitchy attitude was relentless. She'd glare at me with disdain, throw biting comments, and try to make me look bad in front of everyone. But I kept my composure. I knew she was trying to get under my skin, but I refused to give her that satisfaction. I stayed professional, focused on the facts, and let the evidence speak for itself. The emotional toll was heavy. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and exhausted. Every day was a battle just to keep my head up. I kept wondering how I'd let it get this far, how I'd trusted her so blindly, only to find out she'd been lying, cheating, and stealing right under my nose. But deep down, I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I realized I'd been naive, but I wasn't anymore. I was finally seeing her for who she really was, bitchy, manipulative, and selfish. The final court date was approaching, and I knew this was the last step before I could finally start rebuilding my life. I'd done everything I could, gathered evidence, stayed calm, fought back. I just hoped that once the judge saw the truth, she'd see through Emily's manipulations and give me a fair outcome. Honestly, I was tired of the whole circus, but I also knew I had to stay strong. I'd fought tooth and nail, and I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything. Not this time. Now I'm just waiting for the judge's decision. I don't know what it'll say, but I do know I finally have the proof I need. And I've learned a lot from all this, about trust, betrayal, and the importance of standing up for yourself. No matter how bitchy or manipulative someone seems, the truth will come out if you're prepared to fight for it. I don't regret fighting for what's right. I just wish I'd seen her true colors sooner. The day the judge finally handed down the verdict was a relief I felt deep in my bones. I sat there quietly, listening as the court officially awarded me full custody of everything. Our house, the savings, the investments, even the small business I'd started before we married. Emily's face, twisted with rage and disbelief, was a sight I won't forget. She tried to argue, to plead, even to throw a tantrum in the courtroom, but none of it changed the outcome. The evidence was irrefutable, and the court had seen enough of her bitchy manipulations to know she was untrustworthy. As I walked out of the courthouse, a weight lifted from my shoulders. I felt exhausted but also victorious, like I'd finally reclaimed my life from her chaos. I knew I'd have to rebuild everything from scratch, but at least now I could do it without her bitchy attitude, lies, and greed clouding my future. I made a promise to myself to never let anyone manipulate or betray me like that again. Trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild, and I learned the hard way not to give it so easily. Looking back, I realized just how much her betrayal changed me. I'm more cautious now, more aware of the signs of manipulation and deceit. I also learned the importance of protecting myself, financially, emotionally, and legally. I would tell anyone in a similar situation to document everything, keep their cool, and never underestimate how far someone will go when they feel cornered or desperate. Emily's bitchy attitude was her weapon, but my evidence was my shield. I also found a strange sense of closure in all this. The anger, the sadness, the frustration, it's all still there, but it's tempered with a newfound strength. I've come out of this knowing I won't be blindsided again. I've learned to trust my instincts and to listen to that little voice that says something off. I've also learned that sometimes the only way to truly move on is to face the truth head on, no matter how ugly it might be. Now I'm focused on rebuilding my life, taking care of myself, reconnecting with friends and family, and figuring out what I want next. I've started seeing a therapist to work through the emotional fallout, and it's helping me process everything. I've also become more cautious about who I trust, but I refuse to let her betrayal define me. I'm stronger than I thought, and I know I'll come out on the other side better. The whole experience has been a roller coaster, one I never expected to ride. But I'm grateful for the lessons. I learned that betrayal can come from the person you trust most, but also that resilience and evidence can win even the ugliest battles. I hope anyone reading this who's going through something similar knows they're not alone. Trust your gut, document everything, and don't be afraid to fight for yourself. Because in the end, the truth will always find a way to come out, and you'll be better for it.